Hey buddy, so we are going to learn about minimal API today. Okay, so to talk on minimal API, we have Gaurav Madan with us. He is a founder and head of engineering at Nivi. He is also a public speaker and he is also running one technical YouTube channel that you can find in the link that is named with Code Stellar.
Hello, everyone. Uh, Great thanks to Praveen for inviting me on his channel and to talk about minimal APIs. I'll be using Visual Studio Code to talk about minimal APIs. We'll understand what minimal API is, and we'll make use of Visual Studio Code and .NET CLI to generate our first API. So first things first, we have just three things: minimal API, what it is. We'll talk about web application class, and we'll generate our first API. What is minimal API? Well, these are architected to create HTTP APIs with minimal dependencies. Nowadays, you want to create microservices, and those microservices should be super small. So Microsoft has given you this minimal API, and its footprint is super small. All you need is a web application or web application builder instance and the route handlers, and based on the pattern matching, it executes your functions, the Lambda functions, and gives you the response. The idea of creating minimal APIs whenever you want to create microservices or you want to have the minimal dependencies, very less number of files, you want to run your applications, you want to bootstrap your applications real quick, want to run on the containers, which take very minimum compute. It is ideal for that. And how do I start? All I need is .NET Core SDK. I have shared the link here, which you can make use of. Simply click on this and you can download the SDK. I have already installed. And once you have installed, you can confirm it by running a simple command here saying .NET hyphen version. So it will make sure tell you whether or not this .NET SDK is installed. You can see here, mine one is 7.0.100. So whenever you want to start, all you need to do is run a simple command here saying .NET new web. So you can see here, it creates a small structure here. Let's go into the program.cs. You can see here, it's a web application class, and it creates an instance of web application builder by making use of this create builder, and it builds the application. You can configure the entire pipeline, the request pipeline, the routing, the authentication, your loggers, or any other custom middlewares you want. You can configure it all here. And here is the route handlers, where it tells, if it simply says a root URL, then it should be returning hello world. And finally, you return your application. So there are two things here. One is web application create builder, or you can also use web application create, which by default, it creates by default your application instance, web application instance, and it does not even need to call the create builder. So if you are not having very heavy services, you are not having custom middleware requirements, you can even make use of this web application create builder, and just in 3 lines, you are ready with your first API. Let's run it. So you can run it by saying .NET run. So there we go. So I'm having this API running on my 5267. I'll go to my Postman, will check it out here saying HTTPS localhost 5267. And if I run it and hit send, let me check. Okay, it's HTTP. So I'll say HTTP and we'll send. So you can see here, it returns me hello world. So what I want to make you understand is, just by this pattern matching, it gives you the response. So let's say I want to return okay or return something else. So I can make use of results results type, right? So let us return some bad request or return okay, right? So all I need to do is I can make use of results class here, dot Okay, you can see a results class gives you an opportunity saying result.accepted or bytes or whatever it is. So let us return a bad request. Okay, so this is a bad request, and here I need to stop and rerun my application. I'll talk about how you can do the hot reloading. So now if I run here, so you can see here, it is returning me the bad request, right? So this is pretty simple. You can make REST APIs very easily. So if you want to reload the hot reload, all you need to do is make use of .NET Watch run. So if you do a .NET Watch run, it will keep watching your changes. So let's say if I return here now, results.okay, you can see here my file changes have been detected. And if I go here, hit send, it is returning 200. Yes, I didn't change the text. So let me say this is a good request. And you can see my changes are detected. And if I hit send, this is a good request. Now, let's understand this CS proj file. You can see here the SDK that it is using is Microsoft .NET SDK Web, which means you can even start from a console application and just write these 3 lines and you would be ready with your first API. Let's do it and start creating the same application, making use of console application. We start from console and convert it into a REST API application. Okay, let's do this. So I'll remove everything. And let me close this. And here, let me do this .NET new console. Basically, I want you to understand what the CS proj contains. You see here, if it's a console application, the SDK is Microsoft .NET SDK. And if you want to convert it into an API or a web application, all you need to do is just add web here. And your application is converted into the web application. You are ready to start creating your ASP.NET Core apps. Wow, this is awesome. So all I need to do is create an instance of app saying web application dot create. It says it will create a new instance of web application, which means I'm ready to start creating my web applications. And here I say my map get or map put, whatever you want. Let us say, I say recipes, and here I want to return, right? Let's say I want to return here. I can return anything. So here I have made use of this lambda function. I can write multiple statements as well. So I say return results dot okay, all recipes. And here I'll say let's create map dot post. Okay, and here I'll say recipe would be created. Okay, now let's try to run it out. .NET watch run. So let's check it out whether or not it works. So I'll go here, we'll check out /recipes. And here I say, oh, the port is changed, looks like it. Okay, let me check the port, what it is. It's 5267. So, oh, I did not run the application. So I should say app.run. Okay, so my changes should be detected. And my application is now running on 5000. So I'll say localhost 5000 /recipes. I'll say send. So it will return all recipes. And if I turn it, convert it into the post request, and it says recipe would be created. Let's create a real quick small model here and try out returning a JSON, right? So I'll say recipe dot C#, that is CS, and let's create a namespace. So you can say like learn.net recipes, right? So this is another shorthand where you can create a namespace. You can write a namespace and end it with a colon. You do not need to do those curly braces. And then I'll say public class recipe. let's have simple public class recipe, and let's say recipe ID, and let me take a title. I'll make it empty by default, and let me take a public string description, say get set, and here, I can make use of description. Let's say I say public string, let's say preparation time, get set, and I can do it this way. Now let me go here in the get all recipes. Let us return a list of recipes here saying new list of recipe. So I can have recipes here. Inside that, I can have a new recipe with ID 1. I didn't name the title correctly, so I'll say title, right? Maggie, I love it. Description saying prepare in 2 minutes. Okay, and then preparation time, really 2 minutes. It's hardly 10 minutes. Then
It never
you can
take 2
create.
minutes.
So I'll say paratha. So let's say it's an Indian dish, by the way. So we eat it's a chapati thing that we eat on every morning.
Stuffed, yeah, stuffed chapati, right? With some
Stuffed
vegetable.
chapati, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so stuffed chapati. So you can see my changes are all being detected. So now let's real quick check it out. So if I see here, do a get here, so my recipe is here. So I can make use of .NET tools. I can make use of this minimal API for creating my REST APIs really, really faster. So if you are using Visual Studio Code, you can also make use of .NET tools. I can showcase you here .NET. Well, whenever I do, what I do is, let's say if I have to run something, so I'll say .NET tool -help. So this help thing is awesome. It tells, okay, you want to install a tool, you want to list the tools. So .NET tools, they are the command line applications that you can make use of for generating certain other stuff. For example, Entity Framework is a .NET tool you can make use of for generating your models, for running your migrations. Similarly, ASP.NET Code Generator that you can make use of for generating endpoints. So from the minimal API, let's say I want to create this minimal API endpoints, making use of ASP.NET Code Generator. Let's talk about that real quick. So let's say I create a simple .NET tool list here. So I'm having, oh, wow. So if I see .NET tool list, I see nothing. But if I say .NET tool list -global, it tells me there are certain tools that are installed on my system. It's WinAcme, .NET, ASP.NET Code Generator, EF, right? So I can make use of all of them. So .NET ASP.NET Code Generator allows you generating the code. I just wanted to talk about this web application create builder. I'll showcase you web application create builder and web application create. So let me showcase you here. This I make use of web application.create, right? You can also make use of web application.create builder. The difference is in that case, you have to build it explicitly. Web application instance does not need for you to build your applications explicitly. So I'll say, let's say where app is equal to builder dot build. So I need to call it explicitly, right? So it does not make difference. So I can still say .NET run. Okay, then let me talk about real quick check. Is there anything I wanted to talk about? So like I said, web
Gaurav,
application.
sorry to interrupt you. I see we are writing everything in one file, that is within program.cs. So that is giving me impression that, as per the name also, minimal API, right? Is it like when, I need to build some small application, where we don't have, much business logic, at that time I can choose minimal API instead, that legacy API that we are using, that .NET Core, all those things where we have a lot of domain
Oh,
logic.
Oh, well, there are two things out here. One, yes, if I'm having microservices where I'm just calling the API endpoints, I prefer calling this program.apis, and I do my dependency injection here, right? This brace you see. So let's say I want to create a service. I usually create a service here, like this AI service, I product service, let's say, or I say I recipe service, right? So basically, I'll create a recipe service here, and then I'll inject that recipe service in this, right? So yes, the idea is, yes, you can create your endpoints, and you can simply inject your services, and all the business logic stays in your service. And since there are very less number of endpoints, you can write everything in program.cs. However, if you are still having multiple endpoints, but they are kind of, bounded by your context, let's say one microservices, but still having good number of endpoints, I prefer creating extension methods. If you want to inject any service, you can create a interface, and you can inject those services here. So like you can say public interface, recipes service, and and I can say, let's say, let's say my task, get all recipes, right? And this is it. And let's say now if I go here saying, let me rename this to recipe service, and let me try implementing it saying recipe service.cs. And if I'm having iRecipe service, I'll say, public class, which implements iRecipe service, right? So I always want this, implement this interface, and it is, let's say, let me change your iRecipe service to saying, let me return a dynamic in this case. Okay, so I'll say recipe service, and I'll say dynamic. Okay, and I say sync. Okay, and let me return here task.run, and I say await. Okay, and let me return these recipes here. Okay, and let's say return, and let me have this model here. Okay, and now so I can format this document, make sure that this is all fine. Return new list of recipes. It should be fine. Let me do let me inject that ICE recipe service here. Then I can do here builder dot services dot add scope, right? My recipe service. Right. So you do a simply hold. So you can see our iRecipe service, and you can give the recipe service as an instance.
Mhm.
Okay. And here where you want to inject your service, you can simply say recipe service. Okay, and you can say rs dot get all recipes. Okay. I'll simply say dot get waiter dot get result in this case. Okay, where result. Okay, and I can simply say result dot. I can simply return my result. Okay, or I can say result dot. I should be getting content. Okay, let me say .NET run. And let me check get all recipes. You see here?
Nice. Yeah.
So if you have to create a couple of endpoints, you simply write all your business logic in your services, call your API endpoints here. Still, if you are having more endpoints, which are, let's say more than 5 endpoints, which for microservice may not be an appropriate thing, then you can create extension methods so that the particular smaller context is still divided. However, for those extension methods and for the ASP.NET Code Generator, I would want to talk about that in the next session. But yes, I just wanted to talk about this web application.create builder and web application.create. So web application.create creates the instance of web application, and it does not need for you to do a builder.build explicitly, right? And it assumes by default in the request pipeline, like it does that, if it says, okay, there is a map function, it will assume and it will say app.use routing. If there is a authentication schema provider being used, it will automatically make use of that middleware, app dot use authentication. So that's the beauty of making it smaller. So the idea of creating this minimal API is keeping those files smaller, keeping the overall package extremely small, so that whenever you run your containers, they spin up really fast and your application becomes faster. So this is it about this minimal API.
Okay, so thank you so much, Gaurav. It was really a lovely session, and I think now we are good to understand what minimal API and when actually we have to use minimal API, right? We should not start going and start using this API blindly, right? There's some
Right.
specific use case where we can use it, where we want our application fast with less file, with minimum file. I think that is what name says, right? Minimal API.
Right.
When
Minimal.
Yeah. So that is why it is. Okay. So we are good. So thank you so much, Gaurav. And I'm hoping to see you in the next episodes as well, talking more on
Thank
minimal
you.
APIs.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.